You ever stop and think, how does a new country just happen? It's a huge question, right? Well, today we're going to tackle it using a story pretty much everyone knows, George Orwell's Animal Farm. We're using it as an allegory, a guide to see how you go from a full-blown rebellion to an actual functioning state. Every new beginning, especially for a country, starts with something else ending. And for the animals on Manor Farm, that end came from one voice, an old pig named Major. His message? It was powerful. It was simple. Rebellion. And with that one word, boom, he lit the fuse for a revolution that was about to turn their entire world upside down. And really, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to overthrow the old boss, to tear everything down, but building something new, something that's actually going to last, that's a whole different ballgame. So what happens the day after the revolution? You've won, now what? How do you take that chaotic, amazing moment and forge it into a real, honest-to-goodness state? Okay, so let's get into it. To really get why a new state even needs to be created, you've got to look at where it came from. And almost every single time, it's born out of this feeling that things are just wrong. A deep, deep dissatisfaction with the old way of doing things. So for the animals, think about what life was like under Mr. Jones. It was just awful. Old Major put it perfectly. Their lives were miserable, laborious, and short. Imagine that. You work, you produce everything, and you get nothing for it. Absolutely nothing. That feeling, that deep sense of injustice, that the whole system is rigged against you, that's the gasoline for the fire of revolution. And listen, this isn't just something that happens in a storybook. Our entire modern world of countries, it was born out of a very similar crisis. Think about it. Europe was torn apart by 30 years of war. The old empires were collapsing, leaving this massive power vacuum. People had to figure out a new way to organize society. And that's what led to something called the Peace of Westphalia back in 1648, basically the birthplace of the modern state as we know. All right, so Mr. Jones is gone. The animals are running the show. They're free, but does that make them a state? Not quite. Turns out there's actually a kind of official checklist, criteria that are recognized all over the world. Yeah, this checklist comes from something called the Montevideo Convention, and you can think of it like a starter pack for becoming a country. To get recognized on the world stage, you've got to tick these 4 big boxes. So how does Animal Farm stock up? Let's go through the list and see if they make the cut. First up, a defined territory. And what's literally the first thing the animals do once they're in charge? They take a victory lap. They gallop all the way around the edges of the farm. They're drawing a line in the sand, saying, "This is ours." So a defined territory? Check. Number 2, a permanent population. This one's easy, right? It's all the animals living on the farm. The horses, the pigs, the chickens, everyone. They were there before, they're there now. They are the people, the population of this new country. So check. Third, you need a government. I mean, someone has to be in charge, right? Someone's got to make decisions. And on the farm, this happens super fast. The book tells us that the job of organizing everything just fell naturally upon the pigs, because everyone agreed they were the smartest. And just like that, a government is formed, a ruling class. So that's a check. We'll get to that 4th point about international relations in a bit. Okay, so ticking those boxes is like getting the basic ingredients. But to really be a state, you need more. It's not just about the hardware. You need the software too. You need the authority to actually be in charge of your own affairs. And you need to build an identity, a story that makes everyone feel like they're part of the same team. And this gets us to a really important idea, one that came out of that big treaty, Westphalia. It's called sovereignty. And all it really means is that you're the boss of your own territory. What happens on your land is your business. Nobody else gets to tell you what to do. You make the rules, period. And that is exactly what the animals do next. The pigs write down a whole new set of laws, the 7 commandments. This is basically their constitution. It's their sovereign law, their promise to themselves that they will never, ever be like the humans they just overthrew. And then you need the symbols, the stuff that makes a nation feel like a nation. So they rename the place Animal Farm. That's a big deal. Snowball designs a flag, a green one, for the fields of England, with a hoof and a horn. They even get a national anthem, Beasts of England. And look, this stuff might seem small, but it's absolutely crucial. This is how you build a shared identity and bring everyone together. So there you have it. The state is born. They've got land, a population, a government, even their own laws. Everything seems perfect, right? Well, not so fast. The hard part isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. Because now the real fight starts, the struggle for who's actually in charge. If you look at the real world, nations are always competing, right? Vying for power, for influence. It's a constant push and pull. And that exact same dynamic, that same power struggle, often happens inside a new country right after it's formed. And on Animal Farm, that struggle comes down to two pigs, Snowball and Napoleon. They have two totally different ideas for the future. Snowball is the innovator, the idealist. He's talking about windmills and a 3-day work week. He's all about progress. Napoleon, on the other hand, is all about control and security. Forget the fancy stuff, he says. Let's just make sure everyone has a full manger to eat from. It's a classic political showdown, innovation versus security. But here's the thing. This argument doesn't get settled with a friendly debate or a vote. No, it's settled with brute force. See, Napoleon had a secret weapon. 9 giant dogs he'd been raising in secret, and he unleashes them. They chase Snowball right off the farm, and he's never seen again. Just like that, in one single, terrifying moment, the debate is over, the power struggle is finished, and a dictatorship is born. So what now? This is where it gets really interesting. When one group grabs total control, what happens to all those amazing ideals you started with? What happens to the laws that were supposed to be set in stone, unalterable? This is where propaganda becomes the most important weapon. Napoleon has a pig named Squealer, who is an absolute master of spin. Every time the pigs break a rule or take a little extra for themselves, Squealer shuts down any argument with one simple, terrifying question. His message is brilliant in a dark way. Hey, maybe we aren't perfect, but do you really want the old boss back? It's all about fear of the alternative. Let's see exactly how this works. So the pigs decide they're going to move into the farmhouse. But wait a minute, the other animals remember something. They remember one of those 7 commandments written in big white letters on the side of the barn. And this is how the corruption begins. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. When one of the animals asks for the rule to be read out loud, it's different. It's been changed just a tiny bit. Squealer pops up and explains, oh, you see, the rule was never against beds. A bed is just a place to sleep. The rule was against sheets, because that's a human thing. And with just 2 extra words, they flip the entire meaning of the law on its head, all while pretending they're still following it. It's genius and it's terrifying. And that really brings us to the heart of it all. I mean, Animal Farm is just a story, an allegory, but it points to a massive fundamental truth about power and politics. When a country is built on incredible ideals, things like freedom, equality, justice, who actually gets to decide what those words mean? And more importantly, what happens when the people in charge decide that those rules, those beautiful ideals, don't apply to them anymore? That question, well, that's the struggle that lies at the very core of every single state, whether it was born yesterday or hundreds of years ago.